BK apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Each and every bate. Friday, end of the work week. We survived somehow. We made it, man. We crossed the finishing line for this week at least. And yeah, so headphone heart attack. What do you mean by that? I don't understand. So am I too loud or well, big up to DFC. Of course, we got Natu D2 on the check-in. You know what I mean? The king of all mods, the indelible, the incredible one. We got Blue in the building. What's going on? Thank you for coming in. Definitely appreciate it. And as always, if you have not yet already, like, share, and subscribe. And tell a friend to tell a friend that it's him again. And if you like how it goes down with the BK, you can show your appreciation via PayPal, or you could be a monthly supporter of BK and join my Patreon. We get assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. We got Stevie in the building. What's good? What's good? We got Rome in the house. What's going on, Rome? Good to see you guys. Uh, yeah, the music. Yeah, that's true. I see what you're saying, DFC. So it is February, and of course, February is Black History Month. And just to put on the record, the UA both recognizes and celebrates Black History Month. Unfortunately, we know other organizations have decided not to do that, but we will continue. So, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this subject since we are on Black History Month. Now, a few things. I know a lot of people are going to misunderstand the point that I'm trying to make. What what I am not saying, I am not against being pro-black. Okay, I myself consider myself to be pro-black. I am for the upliftment and the empowerment of black and brown people throughout the diaspora. But more importantly than being pro-black, I am pro-Christ. And if I'm pro-Christ, I am pro-humanity because all humans are part of the imago Dei, right? All humans are images of God. Therefore, they have intrinsic value. Therefore, we are to honor and respect all humans, regardless of shade, color, ethnicity, uh, political allegiance, what have you, right? So I'm here, you know, I love everyone, but of course I'm pro-black because, well, I'm black, and uh, you know, any community that's being marginalized is, something that you need to be concerned about. You know what I mean? So I just want to put that out there, right? And so it's pro-black, but more importantly, pro-Christ. Okay, and the reason why I want to talk about this because many people in what's known as the conscious community will consider themselves pro-black, and they're also about the upliftment of black and brown people, you know. How they go about it though, you know, is I don't think it's very effective because I believe if you want to empower, if you want to restore dignity to black and brown people, what you need to do first is pledge your allegiance to Yeshua HaMashiach, right? You need to embrace the gift of God's grace via his gospel. And once you do that, all these things will line up, right? A lot of times we put the cart before the horse, right? We have to focus on being right with God before we could talk about anything else. I just want to put that out there. Okay? So a lot of people in the conscious community, they will use or procure accoutrements from ancient Kemet and contextualize them as emblems for black power, right? And my point is that doesn't really make sense when you understand how Kemet saw other people. Okay, so that's the point I want to make here. So with that being said, let's get to this. So let's talk about this concept of othering. Right, this is from Lynn Murphy. She's a reader in linguistics at the University of Sussex in the UK. She says othering can be as simple as speaking of a group of people as them in relation to another us, or even putting the definite article "the" in front of a label. As a linguist, Lynn Murphy writes in courts, quote, "The" makes the group seem like it's a large, uniform mass rather than a diverse group of individuals. This is the key to othering, treating people from another group as less human than one's own group. And what we're about to see, Kemet was very much subscribed to the philosophy of othering. Okay, so this is from A Companion to Ancient Egyptian Art by Melinda K. Hartwig. She says here, the prominence of foreigners in Egyptian art was due to the cosmological role they played. They were seen as the metaphorical embodiment of the undifferentiated chaos of non-existence, predating creation and afterwards surrounding and sometimes penetrating it, threatening the ordered world of Egypt. The Egyptian civilized existence had emerged from this chaos, and it might easily be again reabsorbed into it, should the king fail to counterbalance it with sufficient ma'at. Ma'at is balance, right? So the way that Egyptians saw themselves as was a model of balance, whereas outside of Egypt was chaos, right? And since in their cosmology, they arise from chaos, and there was always a fear that they would return to that. So they would do things to make sure that that was not the case. Ma'at was the antithesis and complement of this chaos, a composite of order, justice, peace, right action, and tradition. A noble world properly named and categorized, which could be maintained by the actions of the king and his people. The chaotic non existence beyond it, however, was a necessary component of Egyptian life because it was the source of all fertility and renewal, as it was for the creation itself. So, even though it was against the proper order of Ma'at, they saw that as balance. They needed this, but of course they couldn't overlap into the order because they believed that as long as they control the chaos, it would bring more order to Kemet. Lurking beyond the boundaries of the ordered Egyptian state, foreigners were thus seen as an undifferentiated mass, all alike, threatening not so much to attack, but to engulf and reabsorb its orderly distinctions. In their external location, their uncountable numbers and their interchangeable nature, foreigners resembled the fish, birds, and wild animals of the desert and the Egyptian marshes, which also represented non existence and had to be subdued and controlled to maintain ma'at, like the subjugation of foreigners. The hunting of wild animals, birds, and fish was an important theme in Egyptian iconography. So, again, their cosmological understanding of the world, the way they saw the world was they came from chaos and they evolved into this well ordered society. Whereas outside of Kemet, it was still very much chaos. So, in order for the chaos not to seep into Egypt, they had to subdue what was outside, right? Which is, the animals, the fish, but also other people. They subjugated other people because they believe by doing that, they can maintain the peace within Kemet. All right. And one of the people groups that they felt like they had to subdue and subjugate were the Nubians or the people of Kush. And this book entitled Wretched Kush, Ethnic Identities and Boundaries in Egypt's Nubian Empire It says here, Egyptian ideological stereotypes presented Nubian ethnicity in negative terms, in this case as cowards. In the celebratory monuments of the ancient Egyptian state, Nubia could not simply be referred to by its ancient name, Kush, but must always be, quote, wretched Kush. The negative qualities of Nubian ethnicity help to define the positive qualities of Egyptianness. So this going back to what we talked about othering, right? The Nubians, the guys over there, you know, the guys who represented chaos and disorder. In fact, I think the Egyptian word would be Ishfet, right, as opposed to Ma'at. So since these guys represent disorder, they have to be subdued and subjugated to maintain Ma'at. Okay. This is a quote from the god Amun to Amenhotep III. It says, when I turn my face to the south, I work a wonder for your cause, the chiefs of wretched Kush to turn to you, bearing all their tribute upon their backs. They present themselves to you with their children in order that you may give them the breath of life. Right. So here we have one of the Egyptian gods calling this people group wretched Kush, these black people. Okay. This is from King Sanwaset III. There's a coward is he who is driven from his border. Since the Nubian listen to rumors, to answer him is to make him retreat. Attack him, he will turn his back. Retreat, he will not, he will start attacking. They are not people one respects. They are wretches, craven-hearted. My majesty has seen it. It is not an untruth. Like, these guys are horrible people, these Nubians, these black people, right? These people who represent chaos, right? This is from a companion to ethnicity in the ancient Mediterranean. It says here, the foreigner topos also liken the ethnic other to animals, echoing the ambiguity of the term ethnos, which, as discussed by Siakapas in chapter 5 in this volume, might be used to refer to animals as well as peoples. For example, at the end of the New Kingdom text, the instructions of Ani, the student complains that no one could possibly learn everything that Ani presents to him. And he replies that animals could be trained, and that, quote, one teaches the Nubian to speak Egyptian, the Syrian, and other strangers too. Say, I shall do like all the beasts, listen and learn what they do. You know, so the kid was complaining, there's no way we could learn all these things. It's too much. It's like, oh, come on, we can even train the animals. I mean, look at the Nubians. We can teach them Egyptian. They're othering. You see this? Right? They're animals. These guys who are outside of us, yeah, we could train them. We could teach them. Just they're pets. These black people are pets. We could train them, you know, sit boy, fetch, you know, like that's kind of how they saw them. When strong Egyptian kings exerted their authority, lower Nubian was often devastated. The brutality of Egyptian hegemony was real. Conditions in the gold mines were deemed so horrific that one of the oaths sworn by the people of Western Thebes in the 19th and 20th dynasties referred to the potential punishment of being sent to Nubia, an oblique glimpse of the hellscape the Egyptians had created in the land of exploited minerals. So they jacked up Nubia so much that people were, you know, if you wanted to hurt someone, you would send them there. This is how much they devastated these black people's land. Right? The inscription of Amni, written during the reign of Sesostris I, mentioned several expeditions to the land of Kush and the overthrow of his enemies. Quote, the abominable cash, or Kush, obtaining tributes and going as far as the horn of the earth. During these expeditions, Negroes were taken captive and sent to Egypt as slaves and servants. So, and this is also as a side note, many people in the conscious community will say that, well, Egypt never had slaves. Ancient Kemet never had slaves. Well, history begs to differ with that claim. Countless Egyptian images dehumanize Nubians as abominations to humanity itself. The Egyptians described and depicted Nubian enemies hanging upside down from fortification walls, a means of damning backward people both in this life and the next. The Egyptians often called their enemies, quote, the ones who are upside down, implying that the folk themselves had backward bodily functions, eating S word instead of food, drinking urine instead of beer. This is from the Good Kings, Absolute Power in Ancient Egypt and the Modern World by Karakuni. But there's this constant stripping away of their humanity, of these black people. This is what Kemet did, because this is part of their worldview. They saw the other as animals, as agents of chaos that needed to be subdued and subjugated. In the 19th dynasty, Meneptah left an inscription at Amada about a defeat of Nubian rebels in Wawat. He burned the bodies of enemy dead, thus denying them an afterlife. There was such a deep-seated hatred for these black people that it wasn't enough just to oppress them in the life here, but they wanted to make sure that they severed any chance of them having an afterlife. So right now, it's pretty easy to see that Kemet was not actually pro-black. So here's one of the descriptions, artifacts right here. Ramses III smiting a Nubian and one of the sea people, drawn from a photograph by the author drawing and Macy Roth. So we see this on the walls in ancient Kemet. This is the commemoration of an Egyptian victory in Nubia. As you see the bodies on the floor that were killed. You see the guy on the left with his hands in chains. Right? These are black people being killed and subjugated by the Egyptians. Here's a scene depicting a Libyan, a Nubian, and an Asiatic captive of the mortuary temple of Shahur at Abor Sir. Again, so not only do we have the literature, we actually have these reliefs that depicted for posterity, for all time, the subjugation of people outside of Egypt. Here's a bound Nubian prisoner. This is very interesting. It says here, the ancient Egyptians thought of their country as the center of the ordered universe. They saw foreigners as emanations of chaos that had to be controlled or even annihilated. Since the Egyptians believed that images of things might be magically equated with things themselves, ritually damaging and bearing representations of bound foreigners, here, a man from Nubia, a neighboring culture, was meant to guarantee dominion over potential enemies and control over external threats to order. So now we see that their othering is also part of their spirituality. Right? They made this clay figurine in the shape of a Nubian to bury it with the hopes that this will happen in the physical life as opposed to the spiritual realm as well. So it was part of their religious practice to be against these black people. Right? You find this at the Met. These small pieces of pottery were inscribed with excretion texts in hieratic script, parts of standard formulas against conceivable enemy of Egypt. The general nature of these formulas indicates that they had a broad protective function, rather than responding to a specific threat. The inscriptions were buried as part of a ritual designed to magically neutralize dangers. These texts refer to Nubians. So they're casting spells and doing rituals to make sure that these people will always be under their thumb. Right? So this is not just political, this is also part of their religious beliefs. This is a carving of a Nubian captive, adorns the handle of a walking stick recovered from the tomb of King Tut. The placement of Nubian captive on King Tut's walking stick is typical of ancient Egyptian imagery which often depicts kings as the role as conqueror. This dude had a cane with a Nubian carved into it. When he walked around with the cane, right? This is great propaganda. You know, it's like I have control of these Nubians. You know, I'm like that's the I mean another way of othering, not just with the reliefs, not just with just ritual practices, but with my fashion sense. You know, so the paint. Now we'll talk about this painted box of Tutankhamun. This chest was found in the antechamber to the tomb of Tutankhamun. Carter was especially struck by the quality of the painting and declared it to be one of the most valuable objects found in the tomb. The decoration is symmetrical on either side and represents the traditional theme of victory over Egypt's enemies. As Egyptian beliefs defined foreigners as inhabitants of the kingdom of chaos, the pharaoh claimed the right to intervene militarily against anyone who compromised the universal order of which he was the guarantor. The casket was closed using ties that were attached to the knobs that could be seen on the lid on the short sides. Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun's tomb, right? And here's the tomb itself, right? And we're gonna look at some of the images that we see in this tomb, right? On the long sides of the box, the king is shown in his chariot charging the Syrians and Nubians, i.e., the two potential enemies in the north and the south. On the lid, the king is again in his chariot, this time in two scenes of hunting wild animals. On the two short sides, he is in the guise of a sphinx trampling over fallen enemies. These are the traditional themes reaffirming the pharaoh's domination over external enemies and the forces of nature, but they are presented in the way which became standard in the new kingdom. Look who the pharaoh is trampling. Trampling black people to show his dominance. Right? A scene painted on the side, and this is all the same casket now. This is what we're just looking at different sides of this casket. A scene painted on the side of a casket in Tutankhamun's depicting a battle against the Nubians. This detail shows wounded or dead Nubian soldiers and horses jumbled together in a scene of chaos. Look at all these black bodies being destroyed because Pharaoh believes that by doing so, he can maintain ma'at and order in his kingdom. Because he believes that it's his job to keep these agents of chaos at bay. This is Nubian women and children depicted within the procession of tribute for King Thutmose. This scene is depicted within the tomb of Horemheb, not the latter king with the same name, but an official of the king Thutmose I. Here's another depiction of wretched Cush. The ideologues of the Egyptian state created similar oppositional ethnic categories for political ends. Thus, Cush, the ancient toponym for Upper Nubia, was transformed into wretched Cush. After the Egyptian New Kingdom conquest, quote, wretched connotes not only inferiority, but also a sense of foreordained failure in any rebellion against Egyptian authority. The mandatory linkage of wretched and Cush also activated sympathetic magic to work against the Nubians. So again, this was for political, but they also overlap within their belief system. They were literally casting spells against black people to destroy them because of the chaotic nature that they believed they were a part of. Right? Let's see here. So throughout Egyptian history, the best attested method of entry into enslaved status was through abduction as a prisoner of war. This is not to say that it was the most common method, but simply the one in which there is the most evidence. Partially because of the capture of prisoners of war was ideologically important to the Egyptian as a mark of strength in the region. Autobiographies boasted of capture of enemies and scenes of, quote, smiting the enemy and leading away chained Nubians and Libyans became a mainstay in Egyptian art, even when Nubians and Libyans were no longer enemies of the state. So yeah, so there were times where they got along with some of these foreign people, but the what was on paper, what was the political policy, what was the religion, was very much anti-Nubian. And the Old Kingdom prisoners of war included male Nubians and Libyans. Old Kingdom expeditions into Nubia were partially well tested in personal autobiographies of military officials, which boast their capture and enslavement of thousands of captives, both men and women. Right? Slavery was a major part of the economy in Kemet. So to say that there wasn't any slavery in Egypt, it's just not true. It's just not true. They very much had slavery. And the people group that they loved to enslave were the Nubians. Now, of course, the Nubians would get their get back eventually and actually overtake Egypt. And you had a run of, Nubian pharaohs. But again, this was, this is how they sort things. So, again, you can't really use ancient Kemet as some sort of political accoutrement to contextualize pro-blackness. Because Kemet wasn't pro-black. They were pro-Kemet. Right? Because a lot of times we think that everybody in Africa is just it's a monolith, and it's not true. Africa, once again, is a continent. It was a continent with various nations, tribes, clans, and factions. And everybody othered everyone else. So from the outside looking in, we're thinking, well, they're all Africans. Well, they didn't see themselves as that. The Egyptians didn't, they wasn't like hands across the continent and singing songs of unity. No. Outside of the boundaries of Kemet was chaos, and it had to be conquered and subdued so that Egypt can remain in its ordered and structured place. That means we go to war with these other black people, and that means we kill them and we capture them and make them our servants, because that's what's going to produce ma'at and balance. That's what Kemet thought of, these other people. They were not pro-black. So when you see all these people, they wear their ankhs and their Hebrew locks and all these really beautiful things, but they wear it because they feel like it's black pride. It's let me show my Africanness. The Egyptians didn't care about you. If you wasn't from them, you was the other guys. You was the ops. And if you were the ops, you was agents of chaos. So they were against you politically and spiritually. They would cast spells on you, fam. They wish nothing but the worst for you. They were not pro-black at all. And I don't think a lot of people who and it's done in ignorance, I believe. Because we, as marginalized people, we look for things that gives us pride and strength, and I understand that. But Kemet wouldn't agree with you doing that. In fact, if they saw you, they probably put you in chains because you're not Kemet. You're an agent of chaos that needs to be subdued and subjugated. That's how they would have saw you. Now, did everybody in Kemet feel that way about the Nubians? No, of course not. But officially speaking, that it was on the books, written on the walls. And Kemet, they always talk about it's in the walls of Kemet. Yes, it was. This was also on those walls too. So, that then they weren't pro-black, guys. They were pro-Kemet. And yes, Kemet had slaves. And yes, they enslaved black people. And if you was caught as a prisoner of war, guess what? You was a slave for life. So, yeah. So that's it. So, again, we can't, we have to be more thoughtful of how we utilize different things. So, and again, be pro-black, love black people, love brown people, love everyone. But be just more mindful of how you go about doing what you're doing. And once again, I said this at the beginning of the video, I'm going to say it at the end. Yes, we should be about the upliftment of black people, all black people, not just Kemet, all black people throughout the diaspora, right? We all need to be about black excellence and the restoration of black dignity. But that can only come if you pledge allegiance to Christ. You got to get that first. Once you get the gospel, these things come into place. Black people are humans. They're also part of the Imago Dei. They are fellow images of God. And they deserve as much dignity as any other human. Right? So, but it has to be done through Christ. So yeah, so that's what I want to share with you guys. Kemet wasn't pro-black. It was pro themselves. Right? And as Christians, as believers, we're pro-humans. We want everybody not to be enslaved, but to be free. Right? Other people aren't agents of chaos, but they are embroiled in sin. And the only way that we can get true ma'at, true peace, is through the gospel of Jesus Christ. Right? So, with that being said, y'all, you have a good Friday. BK signing off. Peace.